Hi, loves. Welcome to Campfire Stew for the Spirit. So glad you can be with us tonight. And oh my goodness, what a day. I'm cooked. But my intention did come true. My intention was community play. So today has just an amazing day. Actually, the last 24 hours, just all the discussions, all the segments that were just wonderful topics that really touched my heart, slowed me down, and then just the fun and frivolity. And also, there's little moments with the little hiccups are just a part of aligning with life, as Tara was talking about. So, I kind of just want to take 1 minute and just put your hand on your heart and your hand on your belly. And let's just take in a couple of deep breaths and just breathe in this day. It's just been magnificent. And what a pleasure to be with all of you. So just take. And just one more deep breath. Wow, that feels so good. I feel so relaxed. I feel like the best kind of tired. Like I really did have a day at summer camp or was spending the day by the pool in the sun. Thank God I had my sunscreen on, though. Thanks for having my back or my face on that, Tara. But anyway, so tonight we're sitting around the virtual fire, and it will be myself and Tara, Sarina, and Rachel, and all of us are just going to share some thoughts and stories around the warrior goddess path that we've taken, and just share that with you. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I just to give you a little backstory, I was introduced to Heather Ashamara in terms of her writings 2 years ago this month, August. And I kept watching my Facebook page, and these little quotes kept popping up, and everyone hooked me. It just really called my attention and also spoke to my soul. It just every word just resonated for me. So I was just curious, like who is this? What is this? And so I ended up doing a little research and found the Warrior Goddess training and ordered the book. And within a few pages of starting the book, I was just blown away. And you have these callings. I've come to trust these when you have those moments when you're like, this is for me, and you just know it. And it was that kind of moment. Like every cell in my body was just like, yes. So I ended up reading the book and ended up going to Sedona for the Warrior Goddess weekend in September in 2018. And that was a whole magic of its own. I mean, just being in Sedona and the Red Rocks and just walking the land there, and everything, the fire walk, I moon bathed, everything. And also, and most importantly, was just meeting Heather Ashamara and the Warrior Goddess community, Team Pixie. There wasn't a leadership team then, but and just the women that I met there. Jamie, you were there too. I think it was your first Warrior Goddess event. But yeah, it was just pure magic. And when I came back home, people noticed a difference in me, and just like a little bit of a spark that they hadn't perhaps seen in a while. And so that's kind of where my journey began. Since then, I've been on the land a few times, the Warrior Heart Ranch. I worked the work party last year, the first one, which was kicked my butt. It was actually May, but it ended up being some nights 18 degrees and snowing, and it was just a hoot. And again, I hadn't been camping. As a matter of fact, this actually looks like the tent I was in on the land. So feels like I'm home. But yeah, so that stretched me in a million different ways. Just physically, the labor part. I used Heather Ash's truck. My friend Bo and I drove like all the metal objects to the metal place, and we had to get stuff weighed. I mean, it was like I was stretched beyond my wildest imaginings. And it was also like the best kind of stretching too, just like having the opportunity to be on the land and just get connected with that place. I mean, I could just sit there and listen to the wind. And because it was so cold, it like the wind was my lullaby at night. It was just, I hear it now, just magnificent. And then obviously, I was back there last year for the leadership team meeting. I was in Teotihuacan, Mexico with the Warrior Goddess group, and I've been taking a number of different trainings over the last couple of years. So my plate's been full with Warrior Goddess, and it's really like I don't even have words for the impact it's had on my life. It's just been incredible. But if I had to speak to anything in the moment that really calls me, it's just this idea of coming home to yourself. I mean, I'm not a young girl. I'm actually 57. I'm very proud of that. I've had an interesting life, lots of adventure, heartbreak, the whole thing, right? Everyone has a story. Um, and I guess I never realized I've been sort of moving along in my life and having different experiences and healing from things that hurt my heart, a lot of personal losses through death, and I had a lot of grief to work through. Um, and I always stayed the path, though, no matter what came my way. I always stayed the path. And it's just so funny how now that I'm looking back, I can see where some of the Warrior Goddess training um, was already a part of my life and I didn't know it. Like aligning with life. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones for me. That's, so much came my way. And, Heather Ash tells the story of the biosphere that back in I think it was like the 70s or 80s, they created this dome in a whole like town under this dome that they had people living there and living life there. I think it was probably for about 3 years, and they had all these trees that grew. And at the end of the 3 years, all the trees fell over and they couldn't figure out what the problem was. So they went into the biosphere to research that and kind of figure out what happened. And one day they ended up finding out was that there was no wind in the biosphere. So the trees needed wind in order to gain their strength. And when I heard that story, it made me love my life even with all its challenges, because I understood in that moment from that story that any challenges or obstacles or anything I had been through up until that point were just wind, just making me stronger within myself. Now, all that being said, there are some things that I still work on, and so when I talk about this idea of coming home to myself, what that really is self-love. That is something that I have struggled with my whole life, and it's kind of crazy in a way because I'm pretty gregarious. I'm pretty much an optimist and a kind of a fun-loving, heart-based person, and I've had many wonderful experiences in my life. But somewhere along the way, I didn't learn to value myself. And I know part of this comes just maybe from my upbringing a bit. I was the youngest of 9, and my dad passed when I was 3 weeks old. And my family always said I was the light in their darkest hour. So I definitely took that role on, being the light. I was always like sweet and funny and a nice kid. Um, but now, as I'm talking to you, I realize one of the things that I did learn growing up was that others were more important than me. A lot of my time and attention and love went toward the other, whoever that was. And as my mother would say, I came by it honestly. She was an amazing woman who never folded on us, but she did so much and took care of so many people, not just her children. So I guess in a way, in terms of warrior goddess talk, I discovered, especially through the book, that I am a people pleaser. Go figure. So, and that was a revelation. I guess I kind of always knew it, but I guess I had never heard it in those terms before. So, so the other has been more important. But over the last few years, even before I started the warrior goddess journey, I started to evaluate that and really looking at, why do you feel this way about yourself? And in a way, it didn't even matter what the reasons were. I knew it needed to change. And it's really funny because I was talking with, I think, Sarina and Tara one time, and I was talking about this idea of like having a love affair with myself. Um, because I was also like searching for love in all the wrong places and kind of being a doormat in a way. I think it was Picasso said either you're a goddess or doormat. And I think I was a bit of a doormat, a fun doormat, but a doormat. And I remember, goodness me, this must have been at least 10 years ago. A dear friend of mine, this was kind of bubbling to the surface for a long time. And I did this in stages. It wasn't all at once. And I remember I was feeling this unworthiness. And this one night, a friend of mine came over and he's like, I'm going to just bring a bottle of wine. We'll just sit and talk and see what's going on. And I still saved this bottle because he brought me a bottle of Worthy. And I've had this bottle of wine for this, it's empty, obviously. But it's just a reminder that I'm worthy. Now, you could look at this for many different ways, right? Like he gave me this bottle, he gave me the Worthy. But what I know for sure now is I am worthy. And I don't need a bottle of wine. I don't need someone to give me my Worthy. I have it within myself. So back to this idea of self-love and worthiness, when I started to have a love affair with myself, I started, and again, this goes back to the warrior goddess training, like purify the vessel. At one point, after a number of family deaths, I was up to like 215 pounds. I was just, I didn't know how to handle the heartbreak. And so I did what I could to navigate those times. And so slowly I began to work with the grief and just started to think about how do I take care of myself? And if you're going to have a love affair with yourself, what does that even mean? And so initially it was really very surface, I would say. Like I thought about it in terms of what would I want with the guy I would date? Because I was meeting a bunch of guys and they weren't doing anything for me. And I kind of figured, well, if I'm not going to find the person that's right for me and I'm not going to have a partner, I'm cool with that, but I'm going to have a great life and I'm going to treat myself well. So I went and started getting massages. I would buy myself flowers, take myself out for dinners, really that kind of thing. And ironically, just a few years ago, when I kind of gave up on, the dating scene, I ended up meeting the love of my life and I'm getting married. So that's a happy ending. But that's not even what this is about, because I think all the work I did made him possible. And he had some things in his life that made me possible for him. But now that I'm in the warrior goddess work in these last 2 years, I realized that that road I've been traveling of self-love and my love affair with myself, what warrior goddess training has taught me was it was very surface, and that I really needed to go inward to really look and see, you know, what was it? I mean, the language, the agreements, like what agreements have you made in your life that don't serve anymore? And oh my goodness, like that was such a revelation to me. The girl that grew up Catholic, and I didn't practice Catholicism. I've kind of, well, I mean, I did, but I'm more spiritual now, not religious. But that idea of agreements and really starting to analyze that. Um, Also, I think it's like chapter 10, she talks about the idea of roles, right? That was another huge one for me. And, the roles that I played were, the baby, the little sister, the light in their darkest hour, the sweet, funny comedian, and kind of the self sacrificing one, but not in a martyr kind of way. And yeah, so to even look at all those things, right, was like, wow, I can give those up. Like I don't need to do that anymore. Um, so I made the choice not to do that anymore. And I will say it created some havoc in my life, because being the youngest of nine, I had eight sisters. Two have passed, but I had a lot of mothers growing up. And I mean, even at my age, they still wanted me to be the baby. It's the craziest thing. And so I kind of went through some stages with this too, because I knew I needed to address it. And the other thing that I had discovered was that I didn't have a very wide range of emotions. Like I kept a lid on a lot of things. I think I was probably like mad and sad. Those were probably the two, right? And so when I also started doing this work and looking at agreements, some things, not so pretty things came up. And one of the things was anger. And I honestly believed that you could not be angry at somebody that you loved, which is like so crazy because when you love someone, they're probably the one that would be the easiest to be angry at because you love them. So the anger was tough for me. And because it wasn't something I ever really allowed myself. But I did find one fun ways to do that. I would scream in my car, beat on a pillow. Oh, actually, I did put these here. I bought a whole arsenal of like fu socks. You don't need to see them all, but I would wear them like a superpower when I was like around family or friends that I was pissed at and I didn't want them to know, but I knew I had the fu socks on. So I also kept a sense of humor with it. But anyway, a long story short, um, I have come home to myself. And this last year, like through the COVID, um, I was called once again to go inward. And so for many of the months of COVID, I have been sitting in meditation. I have been seeing a lot of people. There's been so much available on Zoom, and I haven't been called that way. But one thing I learned over these last 2 days is how much I miss community and how much I enjoy that camaraderie, and like even though it's virtual, like just playing off of like Tara and Sarina and everybody, like just I every cell in my body is like yippee, like we're back. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of, I mean, there's so much more I could say, but I think that a love affair with yourself, coming home to yourself, it's not a one and done, right? Because you remember, you forget. You remember, you forget. But what I do know for sure is, now I sound like Oprah. What I do know for sure um, is that I'm going to continue to stay this path, and that I matter, and that I'm worthy of love and attention and affection, And, I've gotten really good at getting comfortable with discomfort. And I think that's like my winning, like working the muscle to find my voice, to come out of hiding, and to just live and love honestly. So yeah, so that's kind of it for me in this moment. Does anyone have any questions? I didn't even look over here to see if anyone had any questions or anything, but um, if not, I think Rachel's up. So thank you so much for listening to my story. And, my story is your story and your story is my story. So we're all in this together. Welcome, Rachel.
Hello. Good evening, campers. So I wanted to talk about tonight my journey with reconnecting with my playful child. So, and of course, I'm still working on it. So before I hopped on, I went back and went through an old photo album and looked at pictures of myself when I was, I would say, probably 8 and under. And growing up, my mom could sew, she could make things, we had costumes, all of that. We had a big chest of costumes. There were 5 of us. So we had a big chest of costumes for Halloween, for dress up, for whatever. And I remember just always playing and make believing, and I have a lot of fun pictures of me and my friends just dressed up, makeup on, my mom's jewelry on. And sometime in grade school, I decided that I needed to be more serious. So I didn't stop playing, but I felt like I needed permission to play and to enjoy myself. So I kind of look back through my school years, and I mean, I had plenty of fun, but I feel like I came to this point where I could only be playful in certain environments, or I could only connect to play if I was at home or if people weren't watching. So if I fast forward many years to about the age of 35, at the age of 35, I went through a lot of big changes. I had 2 children, and I gave myself permission to play with them, but really beyond that, I didn't really give myself permission to play. And I remember sitting in my therapist's office, because 35 was the time in my life where I had a lot of big changes. I left a religion. My husband was cheating on me. I was having anxiety attacks. So as I sat with the therapist, she's like, what's your goal? You're very aware of of what's happening, but what's your goal from this? And I just said, I want to be that fun, loving, playful child again. And I didn't know how to get there. So fast forwarding several more years, about 5 more years, at 40, I finally divorced my husband. And at that point, I gave myself a little bit of permission. I would go out dancing with girlfriends or just allow myself to do things that I normally wouldn't have when I was married. And then fast forward a few more years is when I found warrior goddess training. So over the last several years, I've learned to give myself permission to play. I love singing and dancing in the car. I love dancing. So this is really hard for me right now. Like, we can't go out dancing right now. So I have a little sign in my kitchen that says this kitchen is for dancing. So I dance whenever I want in the kitchen. And over the last few years, I've just really allowed myself also to play in all of my roles and relationships as well. And that's really allowed me to deepen my relationships, especially with, I teach high school. So it's allowed me to create deeper relationships with my students. And it's also, it's kind of fun because my own children will just, SMH me all the time because they're like, Mom, what are you doing? And I've finally given myself permission to play and not take myself so seriously all the time and not always worrying about others or what others are thinking about me. So every day I try to give myself that permission to enjoy, have pleasure in my life, to play, and not always take myself so seriously. And I do this even with my spiritual work. And it's just really beautiful. I've been able to say, hey, I'm going to do this experiment. I'm going to just see how it goes. And I've allowed myself to play in those experiments, whether it's, pushing myself to my edges, speaking my truth, whatever it may be. I'm allowing myself to even play around in that way and not take myself so seriously. And the memories came back of our last campfire together on the land and how much fun we had just being silly, singing songs around the campfire, creating new lyrics to old songs. And we just laughed all night. Like our bellies and faces hurt from laughing so much. And I'm proud of myself. I've finally given myself permission to play. Yes. I need to go out and skip down the street. I do that. I take my dog for a walk and I'll just dance, or I'll be listening to some music and singing along. People can think whatever they want, right? So I think as women and as mothers, and for me being a teacher and a role model, I thought for a long time that I needed to be serious. And I'm not saying that I was always serious. I did have fun. But not to the extent that I allow myself now. And even being able to see the humor in little things. So, yeah, that's just what I wanted to share with you today. My journey, my continuous journey on reconnecting with that playful child. Like I said, when I was 8 and under, I would dress up, I would put makeup on, I would play a character, I would dance around the house. And just reconnecting with that. And that's another big part of that is just allowing myself to be seen, which is something else that I've been working with. So I thank you for joining us for our Campfire Stew for the Spirit. And I think Tara and Sarina are up next. Sparkle and Spatula.
There, thank you.
Hello.
Hello. It's Sparkle and Spatula in our little
Thank you, Wildflower.
Thank you, Wildflower.
And
that was
Shooting
beautiful.
Star.
Oh. All right, so it's our turn to share. Shall I go first?
It is our turn to share. I would be delighted if you went first.
All right, thank you. So I will share a bit about my warrior goddess journey and about why I love this work so much and about its impact on me. I'm going to put it on me, okay, for a little bit, and then I'll put it on you.
Perfect.
There, because it's weird looking at it sideways. It really is strange. So I'm going to do it this way. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had this moment of clarity, and it's funny how things like this happen, and you don't really realize what's coming. About, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago now, and I had been looking for something, right? I'd been going through my life doing the same thing. I have 2 children who are now both adults, but at the time they were younger, like they were 15 and 18. So one was just getting ready to finish school. One still had a few more years in high school. But I was seeing the end of that mothering period of my life, right? You know, that space of where every day, the daily need doesn't mean that being a mother ends, but it changes as your children get older. So that was happening at the same time. So there's a whole bunch of pieces that were happening at the same time. What was also happening at the same time is there were these murmurs and these discussions of moving to Texas. Now, I didn't actually move for another 3-4 more years, right? So there was some space in there, but the talk had started. And this idea of that when we went, once the children are older, that I could do whatever I wanted. And I was kind of terrified of that concept. And I'll share with you why. What was happening for me at that point is I had spent years in a role, I guess you could call it. It was of kind of semi-asleep. I had a serious, chronic pain condition and took a lot of medications for it and got by pretty well, right? I did okay. But what's happening as the years went on, I was getting really weighted down by medications. I was getting really weighted down by the routine of having to talk to doctors and see doctors and deal with all of that. So this was happening, but I also had these growing children. And then I had this family that, this husband that we were looking at moving to Texas together, and all these things were happening. And I knew, having had been on some of these medications for over a decade, right? And still being someone who was in pain, that to change that would be really disruptive to everyone's life, right? I was mom. I was supposed to, take care of everybody, do what was expected, be there for everyone, and just not screw up anybody else's life. Like, really, that was general as mom, as my role, right? Consistency and be there. And I started grappling, and there's so much more to this story, but I'm kind of abbreviating it as best as I can. But as I was grappling with this idea of, I want to make this change, this is too heavy, this is too much, I kind of squished it down quite a bit because I knew that it would upset everybody's life. All right. Not because anybody was putting any pressure on me. My family is fabulous. This was all internal. This was what's expected from the time I was little. That you put yourself last, right? That you suck it up and you make it work. And I was trying really, really hard to just do that, just to keep everything working. And I got to this moment where it was just all of a sudden it became crystal clear that just wasn't going to cut it anymore. It wasn't good. But I had put it off for so long because I wasn't listening to myself and I wasn't taking care of myself. I mean, I thought I was. If you had asked me then, I would have totally said yes, right? Because this whole pleasing and caretaking of everyone else was serving me, and that it felt safer not to have the conflict or this disrupt for everybody else. So I felt safer. And, and then made the decision to make a big, big, big pivotal change in my life and to find other ways of coping with the pain, and then go through the process of removing all of those the pain-killing medication. So that's a whole other story. But what was really important was that realization. So I went through that, and then shortly after I came through this big detox process, and I was home, and I was starting recovery of like my body physically getting back in, because it had kind of, everything had fallen sideways. I saw this book advertised on Facebook. And I did not read self-help books. Like, that was just not my thing. I didn't see it there. Like, I didn't know, like, that was not my shtick. And somehow this book called me. It said, read me. Like, it was like, it jumped right out at me. So I ordered it. And it came. And I didn't read it for months. Didn't touch it. Just let it be there. And probably even a year or so went by with this book kind of hanging out, right? I can't remember the exact times, but a good amount of time went. And then one day I picked it up and I started reading. And as I read it, it's like the world opened. It was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been doing. This is what I was living my life in, where all of these agreements was all of these stories and all of these things that I had. I was hurting myself so much by not honoring myself and by not listening to what I needed. And by listening to what I needed, I was then able to be there for others for what they needed. that this process of like, I'm last, just like, don't worry about me, I'll be fine, wasn't good enough anymore. It wasn't working. I was miserable. I was resentful. I was unhappy. Like inside there was a part that was really wanting some more. And I want to correct a little bit, because I don't want to say I wasn't happy. I really was. I had and I have a fabulous life, but I wasn't living it as fully as I wanted. I wasn't honoring me and what I needed. And it's a theme that has come up, and I see it now. I recognize it now and through this work. So I recognize when I see myself going down a path really in any way of like, oh, right? There it is again. I'm pushing down what the voices in my head are telling me what I need, because I'm worried about what other people are going to think. I'm worried about conflict. I'm worried about all of these things. So it's a work in progress of learning. But this work has opened me in such a beautiful way. And we are worth it. We are worth the time. We are worth loving ourselves. Totally.
Oh, is that my cue?
Yes, the turning of the laptop is your cue.
Hello. Thank you for that beautiful share. So, I'm Spatula, formerly known as Sarina. And, where to begin? So the story that I want to share with all of you tonight, the little piece of it, is how the teachings of Warrior Goddess training and my relationship with Heather Ash really got me connected back to the wilderness and back to nature, and a feeling of safety and trust and power that I lost for many years. So when I came to Warrior Goddess training, I don't know, I guess it was almost 5 years ago. I was very unsure of myself, and I had this huge facade of being tough, and also simultaneously could play the damsel in distress really well. And I was living most of my adult life up to that point in the city. Actually, not most. I lived my entire adult life in the city. And that was very jarring for me at first. Like, I didn't understand it. And I grew up in a really small town in the middle of the desert in California. And it was weird going from small town girl to the big city of Dallas, Fort Worth for university. And so I'd spent about 10 years, maybe not quite that long, in the city, really disconnected from nature and just making poor decisions that often involved nightclubs and too much alcohol. And lots of relationships that were based on like transactions instead of like deep intimacy and like connection. And so shortly after I'd found Warrior Goddess training, I discovered and was invited to cook for this weekend that was out in nature. And I was like, ooh, what's that? And I never would have said yes had I not just spent several years studying with Heather Ash, or a few years studying with Heather Ash, because I probably would have been like, oh no, I don't do that. Thank you, but no thanks. And so that invitation to spend this weekend, and it was actually like 4 or 5 days out in the woods cooking, changed my life yet again in a really profound way. And so from there, I decided to go on a wilderness quest and spent the next year preparing for that journey with the support of the Warrior Goddess community. And at that point, I released the maiden part of myself, the always needing to go and just constantly being in this really young state, and dedicated the next phase of my life to being in motherhood and creation. And that's where I still am now. So I love being in this place of creating and deepening. And one of the things that has come out of that is my relationship to land and my relationship to the wilderness. And so now, almost every month, but definitely every other month, I spend a significant amount of time out in the wilderness. And when I first started this work, I didn't own a tent. I didn't have a sleeping bag. I didn't have hiking boots. Like, I had no idea. I had nothing. And so I went out. I think maybe I collected gear for like 6 months. And then I went out, and I tend to do this thing where I go buy all the things and then I show up at whatever the project is. It's a form of procrastination and distraction, which I'm also very good at. And so I show up at these events and I start setting up my tent. And for the first bit of time, probably for the first year or two, is excruciating. I was scared of everything. A spider would move and I'd scream. And then I finally got to this point where I could sleep outside of a tent in just like a tarp and a sleeping bag outside. And that was really cool too, because it helped me build up my confidence. It helped me build up my trust in myself. And it really helped me reconnect to nature. And I still see these cycles or these places. I just went camping last weekend, and it actually has been, 9 months since the last time I'd camped because of COVID-19. I normally spend a large chunk of my spring and summer camping in community. And I kind of reverted back a little bit and was scared again of every single thing that moved. And there were ticks and chiggers, and all of a sudden I had this obstacle before me, and I just kept recommitting myself and also giving myself grace. And so I think there was something about growing up in a small town in the middle of nowhere, out in the fields and the sand dunes, and then coming to the city and now refinding that place out in nature. And that's one thing that Warrior Heart Ranch in particular has done, has really allowed me to settle into another piece of land and to allow it to hold me. And so part of why I wanted to share this with everyone tonight was to invite you to go outside, to garden, or to look at the stars, to remember that we're a part of nature and reconnect in that way. And also to stretch a little, to see, are there things that you could try out and experiment and play with, and see if they might build up your confidence a little or help you trust yourself just a little bit more than you do now. So I really appreciate the ability to share with you tonight, and looking forward to being in deeper relationship with all of you. Mwah.
All right. We're going to bring, let's see, for now, we'll just have everybody back in. There we are. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to change it so we can see us, because otherwise our faces are cut off. And Shooting Star, I believe you're going to take over right now, right?
Yeah, I am.
Oh,
and I did want to.
There we go.
Oh, I did want to say one more thing, that, I was just thinking about this idea of intimacy, right? And that word is, for me, is into me I see. And so I'm just thinking about all your amazing talks and the play and learning, that, just that fine isn't, I'm fine. Like, right. What you were talking about, like, so doing everything that you did, Tara. And at the end of the day, I think we need to be the love of our lives, right? Like, take care of ourselves, love ourselves, play. And intimacy is also playing in the woods, playing outside. It's learning what kind of eggs you like, right? You were talking about Julia Roberts sometime earlier today. anyway, we're worthy, and we're deserving of our own love, and everything stems from that. If we can get this relationship right, everything stems from that. So I just felt like I wanted to add that. All right. So ready for the song? Okay. It's called Circle of Women. I don't know if you were able to put it up or not. If not, I'll just sing it.
Give me about 2 seconds while you start, and I'll get it shared into the Facebook group. Okay, so I'm gonna make you figure. Here we go.
Let me know when you're ready. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rachel, Sarina, and Tara. Thank you so much for your beautiful hearts. We are worthy. And we're not even done yet. We still have the pajama party to look forward to. Okay.
It's up there.
And may all mothers know that they are loved. And may all sisters know that they are strong. And may all daughters know that they are worthy. That the circle of women may live on. That the circle of women will live on. And may all mothers know that they are loved. And may all sisters know that they are strong. And may all daughters know that they are worthy. That the fire of the goddess will burn on. That the fire of the goddess will burn on. Way-ya, 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 way-ya. And may all mothers know that they are loved. And may all sisters know that they are strong. And may all daughters know that they are beautiful. That the circle of women will live on. That the circle of women will live on. And may all mothers know that they are loved. And may all sisters know that they are strong. And may all daughters know that they are beautiful. That the fire of the goddess will live on, burn on. Way-ya, 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 way-ya. And may all mothers know that they are loved. And may all sisters know that they are strong. And may all daughters know that they are powerful. That the circle of women will live on. And may all mothers know that they are strong. And may all sisters know that they are loved. And may all daughters know that they are powerful. That the circle of the goddess will burn on. At the fire of the goddess will burn on. Way-ya, 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 way-ya. Way-ya, 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 way-ya. Thank you so much, everyone. What a beautiful conversation. Thank you, loves. Love you all.
Love you all. Thank you so much, Deirdre, for leading this fabulous session. Oh,
Thank
awesome.
you.
And Rachel for joining, and Spatula, and Sparkle. And just a few more minutes, and we will be having a pajama party. So jump into your pajamas and meet us right back here. See you soon.